So thank you so much for coming. My name is Rogayeh Tabrizi. I'm the CEO of Theory and Practice. I'm going to pass the mic to, well, everybody has a mic, but I'm going to ask the speakers to actually introduce themselves instead of me butchering their backgrounds. So Helen, would you like to start?
Sure. Hello, I'm Helen. I'm a machine learning engineer at a startup here in Toronto called DESA, and so I help build and ship machine learning systems at scale. My recent focus is on language, and then prior to that, I did a little bit of work in the telecommunications industry and a fellowship with Sidewalk Labs and also the Recurse Center most recently. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Sun. I'm Chief Data Strategist of Goldspot Discoveries. We are also a startup that specializes in artificial intelligence, but for the mining industry. There's a lot of really cool, interesting things happening there, but they're really at the beginning of their AI adoption curve. And so I'm not gonna lie, at this point in time, it's a lot of education. So.
Yeah, I'm Helen Kontozopoulos. I'm the co-founder and Chief Growth Officer, I think, right now. I think that's what they told me to say. Of Odea, that's how it's pronounced, Odea, of Customer Journey Prediction Analytics. So we think about customers all the time. That's all I do, is thinking about the customer journey, who they are, how do we understand and go deeper into the customer and why they do the things they do. You can see and understand why companies would want to know that. Maybe they don't really care about their customers, so who knows. So that's what I do day in, day out. We are also a Toronto startup here in Toronto, out of the University of Toronto. So our technology, all the work we did on clustering, machine learning, and process mining was done by my co-founder, Pericles Andritsos, out of U of T, computer science. And I was also teaching there product development, design, and entrepreneurship, again, computer science. And yeah, that's pretty much what I do, and I play D&D on the weekends.
Thank you. All right, so I am a physicist and an economist by training. I started Theory and Practice about 2 years ago, and we built bespoke AI and analytics solutions for different clients. Some similar work, mostly different. We work in financial sector and retail space mostly. What else am I going to say? I think the one thing that is different about how we work is that we really start with the universe of questions as opposed to universe of data. And so with that, I want to kick it back to Sarah. And I think, before doing that, so one of the things, when we were talking about what is the definition of success for us at the end of the session, what would we like you guys to just take away from these conversations is to think slightly differently about data. So it's not just about data, it's not just about the algorithms, and also it's not just about the questions, it's about the universe of all of these things kind of coming together. So with that.
Thank you. I actually didn't even realize that we're all part of startups. So who knew that this would be the startup way to creative ways to use data. So I'm really going to focus on the creative ways to use data. By training, my background is actually, I was in banking. I worked in banking and innovations. I used to build risk models for a living. You can ask me all about that at another time. But now I work in mining, and it's been 18 months into this journey. And I look today, and I realized just how incredibly ignorant I was about any industrial space, period, ever. I kid you not, when I was interviewing with this current company, I was like, excuse my ignorance, but why are we still mining? It has really bad PR. It's silly, but it's at the same time, it was something that I constantly heard that I'm like, it's so bad for the environment, it's so dangerous, it's why can't we just recycle everything? And it's the place of ignorance that I was coming from. I had to educate myself, and I had to learn, and the people that I work with have been incredible in taking me from a place of not knowing anything, and then now for me to realize the incredible potential of data science in industrials, it is mind-blowing. It is very rare that you are able to jump into the beginning of an industry as it starts to transform and change, right? And so for me, it is when I think about creative ways to use data, the ways that I used to think about using data, it was marketing related, it was customer lifetime models, it was some sort of banking related problem, and anything beyond that, I was so ignorant. So when I think about the day-to-day of like what we do at Goldspot is we do mineral exploration. So what we're doing is we're taking all the data about a land package and we're looking for a mineral like gold or silver or copper. These are examples of things that we have done. And I didn't realize that the mining industry has so much incredible data, even when it just comes to the land package itself. Like, some of our projects, we work with 80 years worth of data. So at the 80-year mark, that obviously we're dealing with paper maps, right? But we've had clients come to us that have had warehouses full of maps that are more than a century old. Isn't that incredible? But there's like little notes in the margin and like little scribbles here and there that you'll find in the map, on the paper map, but it's not displayed in the digital data anywhere, right? And so sometimes some of our challenges, like how do we help them digitize that? Is there a way that we can use NLP and OCR to pull out some of those handwritten notes and influence that? But a really important part in our process as well is like we're taking all the data that's available and then we're actually scouring the web to see and understand if there's other sources of data that we can supplement that with. So like if we're thinking about working on a property, we go on like Bing Earth and Google Earth, or I don't know what the Bing one is called. Anyways, and you'll like walk the property and you use the satellite images. We'll go and depending on which part of the world we're working in, some of the government agencies have actually gone to the effort of collecting incredible amounts of geophysics, geochemistry, geology data across the properties. And it's all free and it's all available for use. One of my favorite obsessions right now, it's a website by USGS, so United States Government Services, and it's a web page of maybe 100 different free open access data sets that encompass things like ecology, weather patterns, geology, physics. It's absolutely incredible. And I look at this and I'm like, I want to run a hackathon where the whole premise is take 2 of these data sets and do something cool with it. Like, wouldn't that be so cool if you could relate migratory patterns of birds with volcano activity in another area and underlay all of that with something like climate change related? Like, so cool. And it's the neat part, and I think what makes most startups in this space successful is our ability to put together cross-functional teams who have seen different types of problems and are open to the white space and the challenge of looking at a brand new data set and maybe bringing their experience and their expertise in data and seeing if there's a creative way that they can apply that to something completely new. Another thing that I only realized in September was I was at the Chief Data Analytics Officers Conference here in Toronto, and there was a bunch of people representing the different cities. So the city of Vaughan was there, the city of Brampton. It was really interesting, and they were going around saying, you can ask the city for data. We are owned by you. This is free access to information. Ask me for a data set. I will get it to you within 30 days. And I was like, that's cool. Like crime data sets. And in my mind, I'm like, traffic? I really need to solve the traffic problem in Vaughan. Anyone who lives up there, it's brutal. That being said, not everything you see on the internet is free. So I have gotten into Google Earth Engine. They've collected multispectral data for the Earth. And we wanted to be able to overlay that into some of our geology spaces. But if you look at the T's and C's, it's actually not allowed to use that for commercial use. You can use it for experimentation purposes, and they're like, we have a commercial license available. If you email them and ask them about this commercial license, they're like, actually, it's only available for natural disasters, agriculture, sustainable energy, or it's like 5 different areas. Do you satisfy one of those? And like, no, I just want to make money off of this. So I can't use it. Period. I can't use it.
It's actually interesting. One of the questions related to that we always get is, any company that I sit in front of, doesn't matter, small, big, enterprises, massive banks, massive logistics company, every single one of them are asking us about data sets. Do you have different data sets? And my question to them, or I guess my answer back to them, is that the odds are you have actually more data than you think you do. But so the challenge inside these sort of environments is that they deal with a lot of silos. They deal with a lot of the data. Different groups don't necessarily easily have access to each other's data, even within the same department. You'll be surprised. I can't quite name the companies that we work with, but let's say imagine the biggest logistics company in the world. And so, we're talking with our marketing department, and there are two different groups, one sitting in Dallas, one sitting in Memphis. I guess I kind of gave that away, didn't I? But like the same people who are actually doing the same work, reporting to the same VP, don't have access to each other's data sets. And sometimes it's as bad as that. But then with that, the question for me always is, how creative can you be with the limitations that exist? How can you either align around the questions that you're asking to bring different data sources together, or creatively really try to combine different things and and use these publicly available data sources to augment everything. The point of it is to be able to get to net new signals. Oftentimes we talk about SQL overhead, and we talk about our analysts having a hard time, let alone our modelers and our data scientists actually having the data that they can work with. So how can you really bring all of these different things together? I want to pass it on to you because I know you deal with a lot of privacy issues as well. So do you want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, they don't talk to each other. So no, I'm just saying there's like a major issue. Like there should be like a coach just for talking.
People are scary.
Yeah, I know. Are you in math?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. No. I always make the math joke and stuff. Sorry.
I put my economist hat on. I'm not that scary.
No, I love math. So I thought to myself, okay, if departments are not talking to each other, even within banks, so each one is not going to give permission for certain sets of data, and then even within healthcare, we had the same problem where departments won't share data. And I have been talking to a lot of hospitals in the past, and even now, what kind of architecture can we create that can be shareable and people know who is sharing with what? So I can give, like, this group will say, yeah, you can share my data. Let me talk to this group. You guys talk to each other, and then you are starting to, this is taking 6 months. Right? So this conversation between this group and this group is not happening. But for you to get this knowledge from them, the conversations are just stalling. And then you're like, but I need your data. And then they're like, yeah, but you got to talk to the lawyer, internally even, of permissions between the two groups. And this is like at a hospital level, at a business level, at an industry level, we're finding that even permissions, the same conversations happening, they don't need to bring lawyers in that sense, or privacy, ethics, policymakers, even within, say, pharma or health, but even within their organization, they're saying, where is it traveling? And this is within their own organizations. So I go, okay, this is an issue. We can't build products. I need disparate data sources. I need 3 or 4 different data sets to come up with complete journeys of customers. If I have each of this group and each of these lines not talking to each other, how am I going to do this? How is this going to work? So the question is, how do you work with 4 different groups who don't talk to each other? It's like we're in Thanksgiving dinner and we're talking about Trump. It's like at the end of the day, how do we have this? So the question is, how will you build products that create collaboration between data? Like, that's the question. Like, how? So this is, instead of sitting there and saying, I'm going to work on negotiation and try to make you guys all talk to each other, how do I start in the product I'm building to create collaboration of data sharing? So this isn't about modeling. This isn't about me saying, wow, look at the outputs of the data. This isn't anything fancy. This isn't AI. This isn't nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with what we're going to do next. This is before even the data hits the model and even the data, like even the discussion. The question is, can we build products that integrate collaboration so the data flows through your organizations that you're working with? I've got some smiles. I feel like there's pain or tears coming. So
Scars.
I'll give you extra napkins at the end for the tears you are having. So my question to you, as you're building products for the future, don't worry about what we're doing, because at times I'm like, I don't know how to have this, like, I feel like I'm Oprah with like, in these meetings at times. How will you think about designing how the flow of data will come from these organizations into the product? Then we talked about privacy. So beyond privacy by design, I'll
Can I
have.
hold
Oh yeah,
you
go
on?
for it. Oh no, you
It
wanted to say
feels like
something.
you had a big
Oh.
smile on your face. Do you
Okay,
want to
go
say
for
something
it.
to this?
No, I just wanted to know.
Before I say and
what do you do when you're waiting for data in the meantime? What are the ways that you can be useful?
There's ping pong. Like there's a lot of great things to do, like foosball. Like there's things to do, right? This is a business decision issue too. So this isn't waiting around waiting for my PhDs to get data while I'm paying them tons of money. This is not what has to happen. What has to happen is, as you're building out your business model, what is the flow of sales? So 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, what did you do the last 3 months to start pushing more organizations into the pipeline? So by the time you hit 3 months or 6 months, you have a flow. So this isn't data scientists waiting around and saying, oh, I'll get data sets from somewhere. It's freaking sales out there fueling the pipeline. So as it's coming in, we're working. The other thing is the question of that we ignore sales until after everything is happening. Oh, it'll come in after. Okay, so while we're sitting there wasting money, and every month we're spending money and it's going through, we're just waiting for the data to come in, waiting for the data coming in, and the question is, can we get creative? Can we get data sets from other ways? Can we collaborate? Can we create partnerships? Especially at early stages if you're creating something. But as a large organization and you can't talk between each other, that's an issue, you know what I mean? I see it as a sales business problem. It's not a data science problem. It's how you've created that flow of data flow. It's a data strategy.
You're all getting a crash course in running a startup also. You're
Yeah.
welcome.
One of the things that I like about what you're saying is that incentives matters. You know,
What, the
it's
ping
about, the ping pong matters too. But it's just like inside organizations and also outside organizations, being able to align around the important questions and important, what are the incentives? Sometimes I'm an academic at heart, right? And I sit in front of CEOs and I sometimes hate myself because I have to show them the money. And if I show them the money, guess what? Data is going to come. A whole bunch of other creative ways of getting there also comes. I think, one thing that we miss in kind of positions that we are is really putting ourselves in the shoe of people who are actually users of the data. We talk about data strategy, but to me, we actually have to add the word utilization in there as well. So it's not just about data strategy because people like us like to have fun with data. It's about how it is going to be really utilized inside these organizations, who is using it, why they are using it, and why that question or that use case is better than this other use case. So a lot of things that you're talking about in terms of, listening, there's a component of really deep listening that, maybe sometimes as outsiders or as insiders, we can really encourage.
Also, does your contract suck?
Well, it depends. Right.
Really? You've had issues? No, you're good? Okay, I won't say it. Okay, no
I
comment.
want to pass it on to you because I know why you asked that question. So, what do you do when there are difficult ways to get data?
So I think the one thing here, in addition to just the data portion, is also labels specifically for machine learning. I don't know about you guys, but all the time I'm like, oh, I have all this data and 0 labels to go with it is the story of my life. And you can probably relate to that. And so sometimes you also have to get creative with the ways that you label your data. So one thing I did recently was we talk a lot about Twitter sentiment. So before we actually were just getting ready to do this panel, Sarah and I were talking about a Twitter sentiment classification. We were like, okay, well, you have all these tweets, and those are pretty easy to get. You just scrape Twitter. But you have no labels for any of them. And so I was doing this sentiment analysis task, and I was like, oh, I'll just put it on Mechanical Turk. And that turned out to not work very well at all because you spend all this time actually just training your Mechanical Turk workers. And by the time you're done that, you might as well have just labeled the whole data yourself. So sometimes you have to kind of get creative. And so that's asking questions like, hey, can I use unsupervised methods to cluster my data into pseudo labels instead? And can I transform this into some kind of representation, whether it's pre-trained word vectors or like other ways of coming up with these labels that you then may or may not use as ground truth for a downstream task. And so sometimes you have to think out of the box when you're like, I have all of this data and I have no labels in it. It is going to cost me way too much time and money to get proper labels. Sometimes you get resourceful because you have to, and so that's also part of the job. You're always trying to figure out what is the best way for me to get accurate labels in the shortest amount of time that you can, so you can get started on all this cool analysis and modeling and everything associated downstream. And sometimes it's not always the way that you think. And so I'll ask you to keep that in mind. The next time you are faced with a machine learning problem and you think to yourself, how am I going to get labels for this? It might not be paying your brother to label them. That was Sarah.
So I'm actually going to open it up to the audience. So first question, go for it.
So again, the question is for the two Helens, and kind of relating what I do to what you guys do. So we take conversations between advisors and clients, and we categorize them. We try to understand what the client was talking about, and the sentiment, right? And then the other half of the story is really the journey, right? What was the client doing in online and mobile, and why did they end up calling us? So it can be very tricky, like you guys touched on, right? There's so many different data sources. It can be tricky to get to all of them and even to stitch them all together. So one question for Helen: what are some creative ways that you guys like analyze text? So we do like searches and stuff like that, but do you guys have like what are your unsupervised type of methods? And then for the other Helen, what are creative ways to visualize or analyze the customer journey?
I can talk about the unsupervised methods a little bit. With text data in particular, something you can do is encode all of the text into all of these pre-trained word vectors, and then you can actually project that with multiple different unsupervised methods. Like you've got your regular clustering methods, but there's a whole bunch of ways that you can actually project that down, and so you can actually calculate the distance between all of these different sentences or tweets or whatever it is that you're doing. And then you can actually use that to get downstream labels, which is something that I've done before with actually surprising amounts of success. And so you might want to try something like that.
Thank you.
It's a challenge. How do you, sometimes, if it's, right now it's getting beyond the dashboard is a major issue, and I think all of us face this, is getting, like, how do we really show insights within data, right? So it's not a data visualization class, like, you know, but beyond Tableau, beyond the usual ways of showing journeys is really hard. This is where I think we are looking at always finding non-data scientists to visualize and having the expert in the room of how they expect to see it, or they think they're going to see it, and having those conversations. So instead of bringing more people who are going to come up with graphs or other ways, it's bringing other people who are going to come in and say, who's the user? It goes back to the question of how the user is going to use it or how they're going to interpret, because the way we interpret is going to be very different. Visualizing journeys or visualizing any of insights, which will be the trend going forward. That's why you have Salesforce who bought Tableau, and I can't remember, there was another one who, again, it goes back to the data visualization after the next stage, and the trend of what data will be beyond what the models will output is what will the outputs then create insights. That's the next trend. You might help with the data visualization, but it's a hard, so if you can figure that out. It's Helen at Odea. We have ping pong and we have lots of like treats. So you can work
the one thing that I would add to that, you know, when it comes to segmentation, you should also ask yourself, segmentation to what end? You know, what is the exact output that you're really trying? Because, you know, when you're adding a whole bunch of different factors, so let's say you're interested in understanding people's risk attitude towards something. So you're looking at your transaction data and you're just, you know, doing your, I don't know, whatever, risk models and, you know, propensity to default and stuff like that. But then the other side of it is that what are some of the other sources? Let's say digital. How can you actually extract information from different bits and pieces, bring that into your segmentation? Because, you know, let's say you and I have exact same expenditure and habits. You know, like you spend $5,000 on something, I spend $5,000 on something. But when we look at a few other sources of data, we actually can see that your attitude to a risk is very different from my attitude to a risk. So if you're coming with some sort of predictive anything for me, it better be different from you. But you can't just extract that from, let's say, one or two different data sources. So when we come across questions like that, it really is about identifying the to what end and the outcome first, and then saying, you know, what is that 10 different data sources? Because frankly, the odds are, out of the hundreds of databases that you have access to, there's going to be 10 different data sets that are really useful for that segmentation exercise. So,
Thank you.
yeah. Oh,
My question is about the unstructured data. So basically, I'm involved in the healthcare and the government, and there's like tons of the unstructured data to start with. So my question is, do you think we better come up with some really smart data governance strategy at the beginning, so we don't have to deal with this unstructured data? I mean, it takes a lot of time to actually just process to make it usable. So do you think like just have a good strategy at the beginning is very important to in order to like doesn't have that kind of problem at the end?
Sarah, do you want to take that?
I think from my perspective, I'm a huge proponent of like model governance and documentation. I was once model developer champion for Canada, yay. But I'm really hesitant to implement some of those things right up front because there's so much value in the unstructured data. And I feel like if you're always looking for data in a certain format, you really close yourself off to new insights and new ideas that are going to come out of it in its original form. And especially when you're working in something like government and healthcare, I think you're going to experience a lot of resistance to data entry in a certain format, or this is the process and the procedure, and you know the doctor's just like, I don't have time for this, so I'm just going to hit blank on everything. There you go, happy now, right? And so it can lead to very antagonistic. And I think the governance and the processes have to be layered on as they make sense, and only as little as you need to be effective in the long run, but not there for the sake of having something there. So I like process and I like documentation and I like governance, but I don't think you ever want to restrict what you can do because of it.
Right behind you.
So I have a question. I don't know if you guys have come across, but creative ways of collecting data and different type of data, but sometimes the data is also in a different formats, right? In an unstructured way. Sometimes it's available throughout an API. Sometimes you need to collect using screen scraping or very creative ways, right? And one challenge our company faces is the speed of standardizing and ingesting all that data. Assuming you have a fairly stable model and application, but when you're reaching out to a new prospect, a new potential customer, the momentum is very important to collect the data that is important for them, that is totally different than the data that you have collected for a previous prospect and customer. So how do you guys standardize and streamline and speed up that ingestion process in a way that you can provide feedback to your prospects right away so that they don't go to the competition?
Sure.
Do we have an hour, no, 3 hours?
That's actually a really good question. And you know, frankly, the thing is, it is really, really hard to think about streamlining these processes without bringing conversation about automation and integration into the picture. So I totally agree with you. It's not about the models, because the models, you know, the odds are you train it, they work well, but you know, how are you really keeping track of the very dynamic data environment? It kind of goes back to what you're also talking about. You know, we're really big on data management systems. You know, understanding the pipelines, understanding what goes into your raw layers, your ETL layers, how is that talking to your publishing layer, what happens within every single one of them, especially if you're getting data from all of these different APIs. I mean, I remember we were working on several projects, and the frequency of update of data was so different across these different data sets. And it's not that you're just getting a megabyte of data here and a gigabyte there. Everything is in terabytes of data and petabytes of data. So, and then the speed of update is just really different. So you have to be very careful about how you're automating, how you're building your test units, how everything is being flagged. Like, in a sense, you have to, it's actually really interesting to think about the machine learning algorithms that create an intelligent automation layer.
I just wanted to not talk about the architecture or data warehouse or what you need to get in to start working on, creating something out of a horrible swamp that they've created. I would go back more upstream to talk about the type of prospect you're going after. And to create a category or to create, sorry, not a category, to create what do you need for your models? Kind of like, what do you need? What kind of data do you need? You know this, but you're saying the person who's in front of you, the client, the prospect, can they even fulfill part of that? What stage are they at? And it goes back to a sales issue, again, a business issue, saying we didn't even, I don't want to say we fired clients. It's not that. It's we just didn't take them. Their maturity level of data or the way they interact with us didn't work. We sat there going, as a startup, we think about time. And again, time is taking up all of our seed, or all of our Series A. So what happens is maybe it's dating. Should I even date this person? Should I even think about working with them? Are they ready? And I think in mining you have that where you'll be in a round table, and especially in banks and other, you're going, if I'm going to be successful in the next year, I cannot work with this person. That's what you got to think. Are they ready to give me data that will really integrate into the models?
The problem is the sales team wants to date everyone.
Yeah, but not every date is made equal, right? Yeah. Do you remember? Go to the other. What was it? Yeah, there we go.
So funny.
I knew you would say it.
I'm just going to quickly offer just one another approach that we have taken is that by going down the rabbit hole in one project area, we actually created a proprietary data set in-house, and we're currently, by random conversations that I've had and kind of realizing what we could do with the data set, we realized that there's a new product here, or maybe a whole host of products. And so it is not priority one, because priority one is paying clients, that's just the reality of things, but we're working on creating some really quick and dirty prototypes that I can put in front of prospective clients. And it's more of a this is what we've done with a few weeks of work. We'd love to collaborate you to bring this to a finished product. And so I'm actually defining my clients based on the data that I already have, so I don't have to collect another swamp, because I had to get past OCR and read 16 pages of legalese to get this data. It was time consuming, right?
So thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate it.